grade 7s, welcome to the second part of lesson 9. In the first lesson we spoke about the theory of equations and expressions. In this lesson we're going to be focusing on equations, and we are going to focus on how to solve an unknown variable. So it says we can use blocks or letters to represent an unknown number. We can then solve the equation to find the answer of the unknown. We solve these equations by balancing the equation. So basically what that means is what must be done on one side must be done on the other side. Just like with fractions, what's done at the top must be done at the bottom. Same thing applies for equations. What happens on the left must happen on the right. And by doing that, we eventually balance out our scale. It says always remember what you do on the one side, you must do on the other side. We will use the inverse to work out the unknown variable. Now in brackets, you'll see I've written SAMDOB. That is just BODMAS in reverse. So the inverse of BODMAS is SAMDOB. Alright, so let's look at our first example. We've got 3 times y equals 15. Now, when we are working and solving for equations, the most important thing to always remember, we want our variable on its own. Okay, so we need to get the x or the y or the p or the q or the r. We need to get that letter on its own. So we need to get rid of everything else on that side of the equal sign. And by doing that, we're going to use the inverse of BODMAS, which is SAMDOB. So if we look at example 1, like I said, 3 times y equals 15. Now, when I've got 3 times y, the inverse of multiplication is then division. So what needs to happen with the first one? It's 3 times y. So we are then going to divide by 3 on both sides, because a divide and a times cancel each other out. So they have divided by 3 on both sides. Now I simplify. So like I said, the times 3 and the divide 3 cancel. So all that's left on that side is y. The equal sign remains there. And then 15 divided by 3 is equal to 5. So there we have solved the unknown variable, and we've said that y is equal to 5. So if we went back and we replaced the y with 5, 3 times 5 gives us 15. That's exactly what we want, so we know our sum is correct. Okay, let's go to the second one. We've got x divided by 4 plus 1 equals 13. Now remember SAMDOB. In this first example, we only had one operation, so we didn't have to use SAMDOB. Now this one, we've got division and addition. So we're going to say, is there subtraction? No, there's not. Is there addition? Yes, there is. There's a plus 1. Now we need to get rid of that plus 1. So in order to get rid of plus 1, we do the inverse. And the inverse says we need to minus 1. So I'm going to minus 1 from both sides. So by doing that, the plus 1 and the minus 1 cancel out. And what's remaining? X divided by 4. That's what's left. The equal sign stays there. Then I have 13 minus 1, and that's equal to 12. Alright, so my first step is complete. Now I say, right, I've got one more operation to do, that's division, so I can do it straight away. The inverse of division is multiplication. So the opposite of divide by 4 will then be, times 4. And if it helps, you can do it in a different color so you can see the steps that you are following. Okay, remember what you do on one side, you must do on the other side. So the divide 4 and the times 4, they cancel out. I'm left with just an x equals 12 times 4 is then 48. So I've solved this equation and x is equal to 48. Right, the next one is another easy one. We've got 6 plus m equals 9. Now 6 plus m is the same as saying m plus 6. So the inverse of plus 6 is minus 6. And we're doing it on both sides. Right, so the plus 6 and the minus 6 cancel out. We're just left with m. Then 9 minus 6 is equal to 3. So m is equal to 3. So once again, you're welcome to go back and test your sum. Substitute in the value for m. We said m is 3. 6 plus 3 is equal to 9, and that's what we wanted. So if you worked out an answer and you said, for example, m is equal to 5, and you substitute it back in, if it doesn't work out to the answer they gave you, you know you've made a mistake. So just go back and check your inverses. Right, example 4. 16 minus p equals 8. Okay, now you've got to be very careful. 16 minus p, we can't swap around. We can't say p minus 16. But what we can do now is get rid of the p, because it's a minus p. It's difficult to divide by negative because we haven't worked with negatives yet. So what we're going to do is the inverse of minus p would be plus p. And we're going to do that on both sides. So that gets rid of the p on this side, and all it did was move it over. So we're left with 16 equals 8 plus p, because we don't know what p is. Now we've got a plus sign. Now we can get rid of the 8. All right, so 8 plus p, the inverse would be minus 8. And what you do on both sides, or what you do on one side, you do on both sides. So 8 plus and 8 minus, they cancel out. So we're left with p on that side. 16 minus 8 is then equal to 8. So we've just worked out that p is equal to 8. So it's okay if you want to take the p over. We usually only do that though when we've got a negative variable. So these ones we didn't have negatives, however this one we did. And the last one, we've got a bit of a more tricky one here. 4 over 5 times s is equal to 1. Now with this one, I'm going to show you a trick. Now it's applicable to any sum that we give you like this. So when I have a fraction, I'm just going to call it m over n. Okay, pretend those are two different numbers. And we must multiply it with something to give me 1. All that you need to do, no matter what m and n represent, all that you do is you flip the fraction over. So I'm just going to flip it over. I swap the m and the n, and that's how you work out the sum. So that is your cheat method for a sum like this. And I promise you, I'm definitely going to give you one like that in a test. So I don't need to work anything out. I don't need to show calculations. I don't need to do anything. They've said 4 over 5 times something equals 1. Now I said all we need to do is swap over the fraction. So straight away I can say s is equal to 5 over 4. Because 4 over 5 was my original fraction. I flipped it over and then I'm done. There's no working out necessary. Now you'll see in the activities you need to complete, the one exercise, instead of using a letter variable, they use a block. You're going to do exactly the same thing. Grade 4, 5, and 6, you use the block to find the unknown number. Use exactly the same method. And in the other exercise, the questions look like this. So just remember to do the inverse of what is needed and make sure you get the variable on its own. And we do that by using SAMDOB.